Welcome to the Luminary Room, presented by Nico, writer and published author behind the voice of 369 Lumineer. This series uncovers truths hidden in plain sight, the stories rewritten, forgotten, or deliberately buried over the past 2 centuries. Each episode a 15-minute illumination. So let's dive straight into today's spiritual rabbit hole together, titled The Great Remembering. Now, before I start, I wanted to preface this session that this topic might not land with everyone. It's a little different because it leans on spirituality, not religion. The kind that asks you to look inward, not outward. And not everyone's ready to confront that. But if you've ever felt that quiet pull, that sense that something about this world doesn't quite fit, stay with me, because once this truth reaches you, it settles. So let me start bluntly. The war we live inside is older than empires. It's older than the alphabet and older than the kings, queens and pharaohs whose names you memorized in school. And when I say war, I don't mean armies or flags. I mean the quiet war that happens inside every human being. The war for your mind, your energy, your frequency. It's the oldest war there is. The war between those who wish to awaken and those who feed on sleep. This is a war over energy, over consciousness, over the very light that animates the soul. Now, some of what I'll say today is drawn from scripture, from ancient texts, and from maps and cosmologies that predate modern science. I'm not asking you to swap reason for fantasy. I'm simply asking you to look at the same sources our ancestors left us and hear what they were trying to encode. But first, a few words about language. When we say God, light, darkness, or spirit, we're not talking about religion. Religion is the institution, the system, the hierarchy, the rules. Spirituality is older. It's the direct connection between consciousness and creation, between you and the source that made everything. Language has unfortunately trapped us into thinking these words belong to one book, one doctrine, one church. But the ancients, from Sumer to Egypt to the Yucatan, spoke of the same forces long before religion claimed them. What changed wasn't the truth. What changed was who got to define it. And second, the common term we use, extraterrestrial, looks fairly straightforward. Etymologically, extra means beyond, and terrestrial means of the earth, or of the land. In its simplest sense, it says beyond the land. It didn't originally come with rockets and launch codes. It names something beyond territory, extraterritory, not automatically outer space, as pop culture imagines. And that matters for how we approach ancient sources. When Genesis speaks of the sons of God and the Nephilim, and I'm referring to chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, it's a brief cryptic passage. It tells us, encounters occurred, lines were crossed, beings and humans intermingled. Read it literally or as an allegory, but notice the structure: contact, knowledge transfer, hybrid offspring. Close to that tradition stands the Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text older than many canonical volumes, describing the Watchers who descended, taught the forbidden arts, and interbred with humankind. And you can find this in the first book of Enoch, chapters 6 through to 8. Those texts frame an ancient narrative. Other intelligences interfaced with humans and left genetic, cultural, and ritual traces. Then look at Ezekiel chapter 1, where it describes a vision, storm wind, living creatures with 4 faces, wheels within wheels, and above them a firmament, a vault, sparkling like crystal, and a throne above it. The image is architectural, not merely poetic. It describes boundary layers, a vaulted sky, watches, motion controlled by mechanisms. Whether metaphor or map, Ezekiel's language encodes a model of a contained cosmos. Now, let's widen the lens a little. Across classical cultures, we find echoes of the same architecture. In ancient Egypt, for example, Nut, the sky goddess, stretches above the earth like a vaulted canopy. The Ptolemaic and later Hellenic frameworks describe celestial spheres as ordered heavens. The Maya, Olmec, and Toltec cosmologies speak of layered worlds, upper worlds, middle worlds, underworlds, and beings who came from the sky and taught kings rituals, astronomy, and architecture. Now, these aren't isolated myths. They're repeated cosmovisions that encode a common intuition. The world is structured, guarded, and crossed by intelligences that move between layers. Let me put this plainly. The ancients did not simply invent gods for comfort. They recorded, in ritual and symbol, contact events. Call them visitations, impressions, teachings. Some were benign, some were not. Now here's where maps start to get interesting. Cartography is essentially memory in ink. When you look at early maps, the Piri Reis in 1513, the Waldseemüller Müller and Mercator in the 1500s, you see more than just coastlines. You see an attempt to order the known world and to mark edges of the unknown. Take the Piri Reis chart from 1513. There are outlines of southern lands, blank expanses past ice or sea, labelled or unlabelled. These aren't places people had surveyed. They're placeholders, speculative continents, imagined territories, regions not mapped by expedition, not charted by science, but inscribed by belief. Later maps, 16th and 17th century works, and even some 19th century ones, like Gleason's New Standard Map, show edges beyond polar circles or ice walls, showing land beyond the known, referred to as Lemuria or Mu. Not in the geographic textbooks, not in compass readings, but in the imagination that knows something is hidden, something withheld. These map edges tell us something. The boundary between what we're allowed to see and what is kept out of view. They hint at the dome's rim. They evoke the unseen territories of consciousness, of spiritual geography, places not yet discovered or places purposely erased from public memory. Now, what does all this suggest? Well, there are two linked ideas. One, intelligence beyond ordinary human governance interfaced with our ancestors. And two, that interface left protocols, rituals, architecture, genetic marks, and mythic lore. Over time, those protocols were institutionalised into priesthoods, monarchies, and secret arts. And here's the crucial pivot for our moment. Power remembers those protocols, institutions founded on those memories, priestly lines, dynasties, secret societies, encode gatekeeping. They choose who learns, who is initiated, who is excluded. They erect thresholds, rituals, initiations, and symbolic contracts. If you read the Book of Enoch or the allegoric references in Genesis, you'll also find warnings. Knowledge handed down can break the human order. That's not moral failure as much as structural fact in the stories. Certain knowledge rewrites capacity. It grants power, but at a price. So let's circle back to the theme of this illumination session. How do these ancient narratives map to the thought that we're in an interdimensional war? Think of two forces. Those that widen consciousness, call them light, living intelligence, the divine source. And those that narrow, that bind, that feed on fragmentation, the watchers in the negative register. The ancient texts do not use our modern jargon, but they speak of hybridization, of cosmic contracts, of watchers trembling when the Great One appears. And if you've made it this far, then maybe you're starting to remember. Because what's happening now, this shift, this awakening, it isn't random. It's the great remembering. The Dark Ones, they've been here a long time. The old texts call them the Leviathan, shadows wearing skin. They run your food, your school, your screens. They run your kings, your priests, your CEOs. They built the cage, then handed you a screen to keep you smiling inside it. Your sadness, your anger, your fear. That's what they feed on. They took your DNA and split it, twisted it, long ago. There were once 12 strands, 12 frequencies, tied to ancient beings, the Anunnaki, the Lyrans, the Pleiadians, the Reptilians. You've heard these names whispered in myths and what people refer to as conspiracy circles, written off as fantasy, but they weren't. They were warnings. Your soul remembers. That's why so many of you feel the pull to wake up, to ask questions no one wants asked. Because every war, every lie, every miracle cure, it's all meant to keep you slow, numb, obedient, to keep you from remembering who you are. Now, the practical, because a spiritual thesis without practical work is dreamy at best and dangerous at worst. Here are practices that don't require a secret handshake. 5. Simple and ancient in form. 1. Practice noticing how words land in your body. A true teaching expands you. A binding teaching contracts your capacity. When a doctrine demands obedience before understanding, mark it. It's called grounded discernment. 2. Daily silence for 20 minutes. Sit, breathe. Let images rise and fall without chasing them. Memory that has been compressed by inherited narratives often surfaces when the mind is quiet. I call this stillness and retrieval. 3. Use simple rituals to reclaim sovereignty. A spoken vow, a hand gesture, a written statement of intent. These anchor the psyche and rewrite small contracts we inherited unconsciously. I call this symbolic reclamation. 4. Test insights in small circles. Collective witnessing strengthens clarity and exposes delusion. The ancients practiced initiation within communities for a reason. Solitary revelations are unreliable. And finally, number 5, read the texts yourself. Look at Ezekiel chapter 1. Read Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 through to 4 and the first book of Enoch's account of the Watchers. Compare cosmologies, Egyptian Nut, Maya layered worlds, Greek celestial spheres. The story is not in single verses, but in patterns across cultures. And a quick word on claims and verifications. Many modern theories stitch these texts into sensational stories. Some of those links are suggestive, some are speculative. When you hear me suggest interdimensional contact, note this. Certain primary sources exist. Ezekiel, Genesis, Enoch, and certain cartographic artifacts exist. Peri Rice, Waldseemüller. Those are verifiable. Where the narrative moves from text to hardware, extra-dimensional gates, frozen ice walls leading to secret territories, names like Lemuria, Mu, or speculative polar shelves, we are entering interpretive territory. Those claims are not yet established, and unless we take a stand, they never will be. Label them as such in your mind and test them rigorously. And finally, 2 last truths I want you to hold. 1. The cosmos, as recorded by many ancient peoples, is not merely mythology. It's encoded human experience over centuries. Treat it with curiosity, not dismissal. And 2, the power to awaken is not given by a guru or a text. It's reclaimed by the small, daily acts that restore your agency. Honest silence, clear speech, tested community, disciplined discernment. So if you carry one practical takeaway from this session, it's this. Remember that words, maps, and rituals are records, but not shackles. Read them, learn from them. Then, once you have the light, use it to pierce the next veil. This has been the Luminary Room, your daily 15-minute illumination podcast. If this episode moved you or even unsettled you, that's its job. Question, read, gather, and above all, hold your inner light steady. If you found this thought-provoking, subscribe, like, and share it. Every listener helps bring more light to the conversation. So until next time, think critically, question deeply, but above all, don't accept the story at face value, because after all, you cannot control a spiritually awakened person. This is 369 Lumineer signing off.